Some people come into our lives and change everything, not because they're perfect, not because they have it all figured out, but because they choose to see past their own struggles and show up for someone else when it matters most. Today, I want to tell you about a woman who believed she was broken, and a man who showed her that sometimes the greatest act of love is simply deciding to try. This is a story about what happens when kindness meets vulnerability, and how one person's decision to care can rewrite someone else's entire future. He had given up on happiness a long time ago. When you're raising two children alone, when you're working double shifts just to make rent, when you're questioning every parenting decision you make at 2 in the morning, hope feels like a luxury you can't afford. But this man kept showing up. Day after day, he packed lunches, helped with homework, wiped away tears, and pretended everything was going to be okay, even when he wasn't sure it would be. Then she walked into his life when he least expected it, and everything changed. Before we go any further, I want to invite you to be part of our Kindness Hub family. If you believe in the power of stories that inspire us to be better, kinder versions of ourselves, please hit that subscribe button. Like this video if it speaks to your heart, and share your own stories of kindness in the comments below. These stories matter. Your stories matter. Let's build a community where we celebrate the beautiful things people do for each other. Welcome to Kindness Hub. Marcus had always imagined fatherhood differently. When his wife left 3 years ago, he wasn't ready to let go of the life they'd planned together. He'd pictured Sunday mornings at the park, his wife laughing while the kids played on the swings. He'd imagined the four of them building something together, creating memories that would last forever. But life rarely follows the script we write for ourselves. Now it was just him and the kids. Emma was 8 and little David was only 6. They were the best thing that had ever happened to him, even though they'd arrived in the aftermath of his greatest heartbreak. The apartment they lived in wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, walls that needed fresh paint, and windows that rattled when the wind picked up. But Marcus had made it a home. There were drawings taped to the refrigerator, a bookshelf overflowing with children's books, and a small corner where Emma had arranged her collection of stuffed animals. David slept with his favorite action figure tucked under his pillow. These small touches were Marcus's way of reminding himself and his children that despite everything, they were still a family. They were still loved. What people didn't see was the exhaustion that weighed on Marcus every single day. Working as an electrician meant long hours on his feet, and the second job at the warehouse on weekends meant he barely had time to breathe. He'd come home, change out of his work clothes, and immediately shift into dad mode. Homework had to be done. Dinner had to be made. Dishes had to be washed. Stories had to be read. And then, after the kids were finally asleep, Marcus would sit alone in the dark living room, wondering if he was doing enough. Wondering if his children would grow up with scars because their mother had decided motherhood wasn't for her. Wondering if he'd ever have a moment of peace again. He'd stopped dating almost immediately after his wife left. The idea of bringing someone new into their lives felt complicated and risky. What if they hurt the kids? What if they left too? He couldn't survive another abandonment, and he certainly couldn't put his children through that pain again. So Marcus had made a choice. He would focus on his kids. He would be everything they needed. He would be mother and father both, and he would do it alone. It was a noble decision, maybe even a necessary one, but it was also lonely in a way that no one could fully understand unless they'd lived it. 3 years had passed this way. 3 years of school pickup and packed lunches, of birthday parties attended solo, of pretending everything was fine when people asked how he was doing. The kids had adjusted well, all things considered. Emma was a bright, creative girl who loved reading and drawing. David was a little firecracker, full of energy and endless questions about how things worked. They were resilient and happy most of the time, but Marcus saw the small moments when sadness would cloud their faces. The way Emma watched other kids hug their mothers at school drop-off. The way David sometimes asked if his mom would ever come to see him. Everything changed one Tuesday evening in September. Marcus had taken the kids to the local community center for basketball. The facility had started a program for single parents, offering free childcare in one room, while adults attended a financial planning workshop in another. Marcus didn't particularly want to go to a financial planning workshop. He was tired. He wanted to go home and collapse on the couch. but he was also drowning in debt. And a friend had mentioned that the workshop was actually helpful, so he'd reluctantly signed the kids up for the childcare program and headed to the conference room down the hall. That's where he saw her. She was standing at the front of the room, preparing materials for the workshop. Her name was Jennifer, and she had the kind of presence that made you notice her even when she wasn't trying to be noticed. She was arranging papers with focused precision, and there was something about the careful way she moved that suggested someone who was used to being organized and in control. But when she looked up and smiled at Marcus, he saw something else in her eyes. He saw kindness. And without knowing why, he felt something shift inside his chest. Jennifer ran a nonprofit that helped single parents with financial planning and business development. She volunteered her time because she believed that single parents deserved support, not judgment. She'd grown up watching her own mother work 3 jobs to keep them afloat, and she'd vowed that when she had the resources, she would give back. She was unmarried, had no children of her own, and had built a life that centered on her career and her mission. She was happy with that life, or at least she'd convinced herself she was. During the workshop, Jennifer made it a point to engage with everyone who attended. She asked questions, remembered names, and made sure that every person in that room felt valued and heard. When she got to Marcus, she noticed something. She noticed the dark circles under his eyes. She noticed the way his shoulders hunched, as if he was carrying the weight of the world. She noticed that he raised his hand with an honest question about managing debt on a single income, and she saw the vulnerability it took for him to ask it. After the workshop ended, Jennifer found herself following Marcus out into the hallway. She told him about a small business opportunity that might help him increase his income. She shared resources and contacts, but mostly she just listened. She listened while Marcus talked about his kids, about how much he loved them, about how hard it was to be everything they needed. And Jennifer, who had spent her whole adult life avoiding emotional entanglement, felt something crack open inside her. Over the next few weeks, Marcus and Jennifer found reasons to see each other again. She attended the community center basketball sessions. She brought Emma a book she thought she might like, and she asked David about dinosaurs and space travel with genuine interest. The kids warmed up to her naturally. There was no pushiness, no sense that she was trying to force her way into their lives. She was simply present and kind and interested in who they were. One evening, about a month after they'd first met, Jennifer invited Marcus and the kids to her house for dinner. She'd made homemade pasta, and she'd set the table with real plates instead of paper ones. David was fascinated by the way the pasta twirled on the fork. Emma asked questions about how she'd learned to cook, and Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt hope. But as their connection deepened, so did Jennifer's doubts. She began to withdraw. She started canceling plans and avoiding texts. She found reasons to stay late at work instead of coming to the basketball games. And when Marcus finally confronted her about it, she broke down. They were sitting on her front porch on a cool October evening, and Jennifer was crying in a way that suggested she'd been holding these tears back for weeks. She told Marcus that she couldn't do this. She told him that she wasn't made for this kind of life. She said that he deserved someone who had their own children, someone who understood motherhood, someone who was ready for the responsibility of loving 2 kids who had already been hurt by abandonment. She said that she was too selfish, too career-focused, too broken in her own ways. She said that she wasn't fit for him or for his family. And then she said something that changed everything. "But I can love your children," she whispered. "I know I'm not enough in every other way, but I can love them. If you'll let me." Marcus went quiet. He didn't speak for a long time. He just sat there, processing what she'd said, understanding what it meant. She wasn't talking about being enough for him. She was talking about being enough for them. She was talking about stepping into a role that terrified her. Not because she wanted to, but because she loved those kids. Because she'd seen their drawings on the refrigerator and heard their stories about school and felt their little hands trust hers when they walked down the street together. And despite all her doubts about herself, despite all her fears about not being good enough, she couldn't walk away. "Jennifer," Marcus finally said, his voice thick with emotion, "you don't have to fix everything. You don't have to be enough in every way. You just have to show up. You already are enough. Over the next year, Jennifer stepped gradually into their lives. She didn't move in right away. She didn't rush anything or push too hard. She simply kept showing up. She helped Emma with her reading. She taught David to tie his shoes. She sat with Marcus when the weight of single parenthood got too heavy, and she reminded him that he didn't have to carry it alone anymore. She made mistakes, moments when she wasn't sure what to say or do, moments when she felt inadequate. But she kept trying, and that mattered more than being perfect. The turning point came on a Tuesday evening just before the holidays. Jennifer had volunteered to pick up the kids from school while Marcus worked late. When she arrived at Emma's classroom, the teacher pulled her aside. Emma had written a story for a writing assignment, and the teacher wanted her to know how beautiful it was. The story was about a girl whose mother had left and how sad that made her. But then, the girl explained, a new person had come into her life. This person wasn't trying to replace her mother. They were just choosing to be there every single day. They were choosing to love her, and that made everything feel different. When Jennifer read those words, she understood something profound. It wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about having all the answers or being biologically related to these children. It was about showing up. It was about deciding every single day that their well-being mattered more than her fears. It was about love expressed through presence and consistency and small acts of kindness. Jennifer sat down on the bench outside the school and she let herself cry. But these were different tears than before. These were tears of gratitude, of relief, of finally understanding that she was exactly where she needed to be. She was enough, not because she was perfect, but because she was present. And because love, real love, isn't about being fit or qualified. It's about choosing someone else's happiness even when it scares you. That Christmas, something shifted in their family. It was no longer Marcus and the kids with Jennifer on the outside. It became the four of them, a family that had been built on choice rather than biology, on kindness rather than obligation, on a woman's decision to believe that she could love, even when she'd spent so long believing she was broken. Marcus proposed on New Year's Eve. They weren't at some fancy restaurant or at a big party. They were sitting on the apartment floor, the kids asleep in their rooms, wrapping presents for the next day. He slipped a ring onto her finger and whispered that he wanted to spend the rest of his life saying thank you to her. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for loving his children. Thank you for being brave enough to believe in them, even when she couldn't believe in herself. 5 years later, Jennifer still volunteers at the community center. She still helps single parents with financial planning, but now she does it with a different perspective. She understands what it means to be afraid and to do it anyway. She understands that loving someone else's children is just as profound and just as sacred as any other kind of love. She understands that kindness isn't about grand gestures. It's about consistent, everyday choices to show up for people and believe in their worth. Emma is now a teenager who wants to be a teacher, inspired partly by the kindness that adults have shown her. David is in 3rd grade and he has Jennifer's laugh. And Marcus, he finally looks like a man who isn't carrying the weight of the world alone. He still works hard, still shows up for his family, but now he knows that he has a partner. He has someone who chose them. Someone who looked at her own doubts and fears and decided that love was more important. The beautiful thing about this story is that it's not just about Marcus and Jennifer. It's about what kindness can do. It's about how one person's decision to step outside their comfort zone and love someone else's children created a ripple effect that changed everyone involved. Emma learned that people can choose to show up for you. David learned that family is bigger than biology. Marcus learned that he didn't have to do everything alone. And Jennifer learned that she was capable of a love that was deeper and more transformative than anything she'd ever imagined. In our world, we often talk about romantic love as the ultimate expression of human connection. But there's another kind of love that goes almost unnoticed. It's the love of the step-parent who shows up with patience and presence. It's the love of the mentor who believes in you when you don't believe in yourself. It's the love of the friend who listens without judgment. It's the love of the person who could walk away but chooses to stay. This is where kindness lives. It lives in these choices. It lives in the moments when we overcome our doubts and our fears and our sense of inadequacy, and we choose to love anyway. It lives in the everyday acts that no one congratulates us for, but that change someone's entire world. It lives in the decision to show up, even when you're not sure you're enough. Because the truth that Jennifer finally understood is this: you don't have to be enough in every way. You just have to be kind. You just have to choose love. You just have to show up. If you're watching this and you're struggling with your own doubts about whether you're enough for someone, whether you belong in their life, whether you have anything valuable to offer, I want to tell you something. The world doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be kind. It needs you to be present. It needs you to choose love, even when you're scared, even when you feel broken, even when you're convinced that you're not fit for the role you're being called to play. Because kindness isn't about qualifications, it's about courage. It's about deciding that someone else's happiness matters more than your fear. Maybe you're in a situation similar to Marcus's, carrying too much alone, believing that asking for help is weakness. I want to tell you that vulnerability is actually the greatest strength. Allowing someone to love your children, your family, your heart, is not a failure. It's an opening. It's an invitation for life to become bigger and richer and more beautiful than you ever imagined. And if you're someone like Jennifer, someone who doubts whether you deserve a place in someone else's story, someone who's convinced that your brokenness disqualifies you from love, I want to tell you something. Your brokenness might actually be your greatest qualification, because people who've been broken understand what it means to need gentleness. People who've struggled understand what it means to persevere. People who've doubted themselves understand what it means to believe in someone else. Your imperfections don't make you unfit for love. They make you exactly the kind of person the world needs more of. Kindness is contagious. When Jennifer showed kindness to Marcus and his children, something shifted. She wasn't just helping them. She was showing them what it looks like when someone chooses you. And now Emma, growing up with that example, will carry that knowledge into her future relationships. David will know that family can be built on choice and love, not just biology. And Marcus will spend the rest of his life showing his family that asking for help, accepting love, and allowing yourself to be vulnerable are not weaknesses. They're the bravest things you can do. So here's my challenge for you. This week, somewhere in your life, make a choice the way Jennifer did. Choose to be kind even when you feel inadequate. Choose to show up even when you're scared. Choose to believe in someone, even if you're still figuring out how to believe in yourself. It might be for a friend, a family member, a colleague, or a stranger. It might be a small gesture or a big commitment. But whatever it is, know that it matters. Know that your choice to be kind might be the very thing that changes someone's trajectory. Know that you are enough, not because you're perfect, but because you're willing to try. Jennifer's favorite thing about her life now is something most people would never expect. It's not the wedding or the security or the fact that she's part of a family. It's the everyday moments. It's David asking her to help him build a blanket fort. It's Emma asking for advice about a boy at school. It's Marcus squeezing her hand when he walks past her in the kitchen. It's waking up on Sunday morning and not being alone. It's being chosen every single day, just as much as she chooses them. That's what kindness does. It creates a circle of love that expands to include everyone it touches. It turns broken people into whole families. It proves that there's always room for more love, more hope, more possibility. So today, I hope you'll remember Jennifer's story. I hope you'll remember that kindness isn't about being fit or qualified or perfect. It's about showing up, and showing up is always enough.